Welcome to another edition of BCTV's Open Studio. My name is Johnny Gifford. I'm the Executive Director of Brattleboro Community Television. Today we're in the studio with the Connecticut River Conservancy. Two folks, Diana Chaplin and Stacy Leonard. The CRC has also recently become nonprofit members of BCTV, which is super cool. And so we're here to talk about them, about their Source to Sea cleanup that's coming up soon. But before we get too into it, I do want to introduce our guests a little bit. Diana, you've been the Director of Communications for about 2 years now. Mm-hmm. You manage like social media, your website, the sort of email chains and all that. You're kind of keeping it all together in the wide communications web that we live in. And I got to say, the website, I was on it the other day, super clean, super nice.
Thank you. I
Very easy to navigate that.
Yeah, that is new as of this year. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Great job. So Stacy, you began volunteering for the Conservancy like back in 2015, from what I read. And now you're the events manager. You are the coordinator for the Source to Sea cleanup. And you're kind of just like, you're combining these things of like creativity and community building to see how you can help engage people with the rivers. Am I phrasing that right?
Yeah, that's pretty nice. Yeah, I came from an arts background and community organizations all through my career. And then I made a shift in 2014, which is when I started looking around for something that I wanted to dig my teeth into that was different and addressed all the passions that I have.
So what we're here to talk about today, first and foremost, is the Source to Sea cleanup. So that's an annual event that you folks do every year. You basically encourage people across the entire watershed, going down from Connecticut up through Vermont to Canada, to contribute to cleaning up their local rivers, the Connecticut River being the main one, but all its tributaries and everything as well, from what I understand. So could you speak a little bit to this event? What are the details? How do people get involved? Maybe a little bit about its history too.
Sure. Well, I'll start a little bit with the history.
Yeah.
It started in 1996, so this is our 28th year this year, mostly by a group of student conservation groups in the Springfield, Mass area. And they reached out to, we used to be called Connecticut River Watershed Council. So they reached out to CRWC, and we partnered with them and brought in other community partners to kind of build this effort together. And in the early days, there were, a few hundred people cleaning up. And now in our heyday, I'd say right before COVID, we were over 3,500 volunteers all along the watershed. So it's really grown into a huge collective effort. Some of that due to the incredible partnering that we do with a lot of local watershed groups, school groups, scout groups, business groups, just community people who want to get out and do something for their rivers.
Yeah, that's great to have those networks like, schools and other organizations that want to contribute to the watershed, but also are hopefully using this time to fulfill any community service hours that folks might need or anything like that.
A lot of families too, just everyday ordinary people, sometimes groups that are led by younger people that really care about the environment. They're getting their friends and family out. It's a lot of groups, but also just regular people who want to do something, who have a few hours to spend to get out there, get their hands dirty, have fun. It's really an enjoyable experience because through picking up trash along the river, people are also connecting with each other. They're sharing stories about growing up by the river, why they're here, what they care about, just connecting, making new friends. So it's really heartwarming as well, and every year we put out this cleanup chronicle where we share some of these little anecdotes. So even just beyond sort of the partnerships and the metrics and the impact, like last year there were over 1,000 volunteers. What I love about it too is just the little connection points that happen, the genuine interactions between community members and people that didn't know each other, but now they do, and then they come back year after year as well. It's really great to see.
I think there's some learning that is involved with that as well, just having an excuse to talk to your fellow people living amongst the watershed and what they might know about it biologically that you might not know, or just anything about their life that you might not have been exposed to before, I think is very valuable.
Yeah, so true.
Yeah.
One of the other, I think, really powerful pieces is that over the years, we've worked with folks to try and understand or help them understand the whys and wherefores of the cleanup, like why it's so important to divert all this waste from our water bodies, because it's going to go out into the ocean and harm all the wildlife and fish and whatnot. I think people are understanding that more clearly than ever as the climate crisis increases and people are more aware of plastic pollution and its harm. And we pick up so much plastic in throughout all the cleanups. So a big way that we get people to help us with that effort is by filling out a trash tally. And they literally record how many plastic water bottles, how many, they might find tires, mattresses, cigarette butts, to-go containers and utensils and all this stuff. Yeah, I mean, we had some really big items as well as the
items, strange things.
And especially after some of the recent floodings in Vermont and beyond, like I'm sure there are some unprecedented things in the Connecticut River at this point, and not even through human, humans purposefully doing that. It's just like the way our climate is adapting as well.
Right.
But that's great that you can get just so much granular data, and I'm sure that can really, comparing that from year to year, can really help see where your efforts are impacting the most.
Exactly.
It also supports our advocacy efforts. So beyond this, the organization does quite a lot, but one of the things is that this data informs our advocacy and policy making. So for example, taking tires out of the river, we advocated, our river steward in Connecticut, her name is Rhea, advocated for a tire EPR bill, which was passed in 2023, the first in the nation.
Wow.
And this was partly informed to data that we collected, because you can't advocate without having the science, and you can't have the data without having people actually pulling these tires out of the rivers and the riverbanks. And similarly, there's efforts underway for plastic and bottle bills and things like that. So, we have this wonderful effort with so many volunteers involved, and that's why the trash tally data is so important. It's a little hard to do when you're collecting trash to stop and jot down every single thing, but it's really one of the most important things, because we are genuinely using all of that data in policy making and to inform solutions and to stop trash before it even starts, prevent it from getting in the waterway in the first place.
You got some data.
Can I share?
Please,
Diana mentioned the Cleanup Chronicle that we put out every year. And so in each one, besides lots of photos and anecdotes, we report out all of the details of what people have picked up. And then we use this with our legislators to try and pass important bills. So we really stress this, and it's one of the hardest things for people to do, because they want to go out and pick up the trash and want to sit there and tally.
It's all about having a good buddy system.
Definitely.
You have somebody picking up and just verbally saying, and somebody else jotting down. And that too is something that can make this really diverse friendly in terms of bodies and young people, older people, all kinds of people being involved. So even if you are not comfortable or able to pick up trash, you can still come and join with your family, and you can be the trash tallier. And that's such an important job, so that we are able to get all this information.
Man, I feel like you guys have figured this out. Like
we're still working on it.
It's always something new to learn, I'll tell you.
Every year is a little bit of an improvement in the system.
Yeah. I can tell you've been doing it for a while, for sure. Yeah. So what are the details for this year's event?
Well, the main event every year is always the fourth weekend of September. Sometimes there's 5. So this year it's the 27th and 28th. We pick a Friday, Saturday, so businesses, school groups, whatever, can go out on a weekday. And then we have the Saturday for community groups. We do encourage people to pick a date that works for them, so you don't have to feel stuck on that weekend if it's not good for you. And then we have 2 tracks. One is you want to lead a group, organize other people. So you are a group leader, and you come into our new website platform, which I'll share in a moment. And you'll see the path that says plan a cleanup. And then we have lots of details of what to do before, during, and after, kind of walk you through the system. And essentially, you're basically setting up an event that will appear on our map of cleanups. And then a volunteer who wants to join a group, that's the other path. I might just come say, I want to find a place near me. So I'll go look at the map in my region, or search by group name or any other parameter, and find a group to join. And then you can join that way and just become part of an existing group.
So it's mostly done through the web interface.
Yes.
First and foremost. Do you guys like take calls at all or anything?
Oh, sure.
Like that too?
Anybody
It's just
can call, but
yeah.
over time has become a little more digital.
It's definitely easier for many folks, but obviously not everyone.
Yeah.
But no, that's great. So you really focus on this last week of September, but you do other things scattered throughout the month as well.
Yeah, so there's a couple of groups that have their own special cleanup date. So for example, September 7th and 8th, there's a big River Roads Festival. It's a music festival in East Hampton, Massachusetts. And they have donated a portion of the proceeds to our organization and a partner with us to sponsor a cleanup the day after the festival. So they're doing theirs on September 7th and 8th. We have some big groups in, we already had a group that went out in August, an employee group called Hypertherm partnered with the Black River Action Team.
I know them, yeah.
And they were just reported on recently. They were out last week. And
they do an amazing job in the
yes,
Springfield
they
area.
do a huge cleanup.
Kelly Stetner's a champion.
Yes, she really is, yes. And then we have a couple other large groups, one in Greenfield, one in Keene, one in Farmington, Connecticut, Essex, Connecticut, and all throughout. We usually get over 120 to 30 individual groups, and then from that, 1,500 or more volunteers.
And how's like the geographic representation for the groups that you normally get? Is it pretty diverse along the river?
I think it follows a lot population clusters.
Right, of course.
So there's certainly a lot more events in Massachusetts and Connecticut than there are further north. We keep working, through media and partnerships to try to expand that. So that's still a work in progress, but yes, it is.
And that too is why we try to create flexibility. So the big weekend is the third weekend in September, but we also, not everybody is available on a weekend. And so we try to make it accessible. So no matter how big or small your group is, if there's a Thursday afternoon that's best for you, you can go out that date. So we try to make it as accommodating as possible to the widest geography and the most diverse group of people.
That's great.
Yeah.
I'm curious about going way back in the history of it too, of how this idea sourced to sea and how it's branded and everything. Like, how did this come to fruition? Were you a part of that?
No, I was not.
No. So it predates you.
It predates me for sure. It started in the late 90s and I came in 2015. There were these groups in Springfield.
Yeah, it was the group of students in Springfield that you mentioned earlier briefly.
Right.
Yeah.
The whole Source to Sea name, I don't really know how that came. I think it's just a common trying to engulf the headwaters out to where the river flows.
It's very catchy, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, we go out to the Long Island Sound, but that becomes the ocean.
Yeah. But with the right mindset, it's still the Connecticut River.
Right.
So have you seen these efforts grow over time, just through organization? Definitely, like you have the stats down and the tallying for the what is picked up and everything. I feel like these are all things that have developed over time. So what are some of the big things that you've seen develop with this effort over time?
I think definitely the work with community partners, because we really try to encourage that, both tributary groups and all the other smaller groups that I mentioned before. We keep improving our electronic system. So this year we just unearthed a new website platform that was tailored for this event, because we've been trying to put ourselves into other software that didn't quite work, because it's such kind of complicated event on the back end, even though what we hope is that on the front end it's very easy and user-friendly. Right. So it takes a lot of finagling to get to that.
It does create a really complicated network of people organizing and people joining, and
so there's layers of engagement, and then there's also a map that needs to be interactive as well for claiming a site, reporting a site, etc. But I think we've worked it out pretty well.
You managed to entirely host that on your own website now.
That is actually an independent website.
Yeah,
so
okay.
source2seacleanup.org is the new registration platform this year. And that is an independent website. We had that custom built because prior to that, we were using other things that just were not working. So we finally found an agency, described to them what we needed, worked with them to make it work. And I think it came out great.
Yeah. I think some of the other ways that we've grown too is we've been able to now, through getting sponsors for the event, be able to provide supplies for free to anyone who needs them. So we have groups that are, 25 to 200, and we can supply them with gloves and bags, trash bags, recycling bags. And that's been a huge support to folks. We also offer tons of resources like what to do if you find hazardous materials, how to be safe on your cleanup. And we have to tailor our messaging both to group leaders who are doing this kind of behind the scenes with their volunteers, and then also reach the volunteers as a whole. So it's been an interesting dance to...
It's also evolved a little bit too based on just what's happening. So for example, this has been going on since the mid-90s, but COVID hit a few years ago, right? So this is a very community engaging kind of activity. So that was a little before my time, but that created a whole switch in terms of encouraging people to do DIY cleanups, right? So that happens. Last year, we saw a lot of flooding in the watershed. So there was a lot of just different types of materials that were found. There were different ways that things were being deposited in riverbanks, things upstream, washed way downstream, large debris like dock parts that were washed away, things that were in people's backyards that were just washed away by all of this flooding. So there's also kind of every year is a little bit different too, in terms of whether there's a certain a trash advocacy related issue that we're focusing on, or certain climate conditions, or just other things happening in our region that kind of influence how the event goes, who gets to be involved, and all of that. But it's always a little bit different and a little bit fun. And the sponsors really help financially as well. So this year we have a new sponsor, the Walker Group. They're an IT services group. Eversource has been a partner, a sponsor for quite a few years. All American Waste, USA Waste and Recycling, that are not only sponsors, but they also help to provide the trash cans. Because think logistically too, there's all these events. There's a lot of trash and debris. So we do have these wonderful partners and sponsors, and those also kind of can change year to year, with some being consistent and others kind of coming and going.
It really helps us self-sustain, from supplies just to overhead, like to anything in between, really. That's important.
Yeah. I want to also give a shout out to all the local town Department of Public Works that support every year. Yeah. People who do a cleanup are able to bring their trash to their local center for no fee. So that's a huge savings.
You work that out with the municipalities?
Yeah, and now over time, we now provide a coupon for our cleanup group leaders to show that I'm part of the cleanup, and that now they just need to give it to the staff of the day, and they're in.
Wow, this is so well organized. I keep learning more about it, more intricacies as I go too.
A lot of logistics.
Yeah, for sure. How long does it take for you guys to plan something like this every year? Like an entire year? Like September ends and you're like, all right, we're planning for 2025.
Yeah, I mean, September ends and then we're gathering all the data, right? All the photos, everything that goes in here, all the data. We're reminding folks to send us their data, their trash tallies, and their photos and everything. We put this asset together, and then we're evaluating what went well, what didn't go well, what feedback did we get, what new issues or challenges did we encounter. Kind of, it's just part of the iterative process of any organizational program. I think we want to continue making it better and better every year to create a great volunteer experience, and also to truly make an impact for the river. That's what really this comes down to. The amount of trash that volunteers remove that is now not in the river, that is now not going to be washed out into Long Island Sound and going into the ocean. That's really what it comes down to. So we work together as a team to make sure that we stay focused on that impact while bringing people together for a great activity also.
Yeah, I mean, for a multitude of reasons, it's important work for sure. Sort of looking at the Conservancy in a broader view, you do a lot of different events besides this as well. It kind of just blows my mind to see just like the sheer amount of area that you cover from north to south, and how spread thin that I'm sure that can be, considering it's not in like a nice radius of an area or anything. So how do you folks like manage to stay connected or maintain like a presence in all the communities that you are a part of?
Question.
Yeah, well, it is a big watershed. The Connecticut River is 410 miles. The watershed is over 7 million acres. It's huge, and we're not in all places all the time. But we, Stacy mentioned partnerships for source to sea. That is an ethos that undercuts our entire organization. Everything that we do is through partnerships. So every year we kind of identify what are the most pressing issues where we can make an impact, where we have partnerships, where we can get the funding to do different projects. And it's also different issues that affect different parts of the watershed. So for example, in Vermont and New Hampshire right now, we're doing more things like dam removals, right? So that's part of our river restoration program. We're doing a little more tree planting there, a little bit more things like floodplain restoration for flood resilience. And then in the southern part of the watershed, hydrilla is an aquatic invasive species that impacts that lower Connecticut into Massachusetts a little bit watershed. So that's where we're kind of looking every year at what are the needs, where do we have staff capacity, where can we make an impact, and where can we apply ourselves. And then we also have specific programs that we're working through in addition to that, because everything is connected. But we have our headquarters is in Greenfield, Massachusetts. So that's where more of our staff are kind of there, but we also have staff in New Hampshire, Vermont, and Connecticut as well. So by having staff that are spread out, we're able to do more community engagement. We're able to foster more different types of partnerships in order to be able to address all of these interconnected challenges that are impacting our waterways.
I think one other addition I'd underline is we have a river steward in each state. And so they're like the person on the ground who's most connected with both local issues and policies that are coming up, and they keep their ear to the ground. And they are the ones who are largely making a lot of the connections with the local community. So having people who are in each local area is an important part of how we know what we want to do.
Just like they're able to listen, understand the needs,
exactly.
the challenges, and then that's brought to Greenfield, and then you kind of lay out your priorities from there for any given year.
And these are, face to face. The river stewards are going out to all kinds of events. They're meeting people in different contexts. They're going to public meetings. They're going to various, migratory fish collaboratives, as well as attending the cleanups and picking up trash side by side with their neighbors. So I think that kind of approach is really, it's just very human. Yeah. That's how these relationships are fostered, and how we're able to, someone might say, oh, I saw this, pollution issue over here that we may not know about. And that's how, and then we bring it forward and see what we can do.
They know their river
address.
Steward.
Yeah, exactly.
Or they know like who to speak to.
They're very accessible. They try to be as accessible as they can, given how much they're doing. It's incredible that they can answer the phone. But that's a really important part of how we're able to have an impact in such a wide geography.
Yeah, that's not easy to do, for sure. So looking at the Connecticut River Conservancy sort of on an organizational level, how long has it been around, and how is it really funded too, is something I'm really curious about. And obviously, this whole world of nonprofits and environmental organizations, it's, we're all stretched thin to some degree. And again, it's incredible that your river stewards and other folks can be so available and put together programming, events, and just be overall advocates. So I want to know kind of where that's coming from in terms of the inception of the organization all the way to, like how are you sustaining yourselves today?
Yeah. Well, Connecticut River Conservancy, formerly known as Connecticut River Watershed Council, was started in 1952. Which is 20 years before the Clean Water Act in 1972. And the Clean Water Act really contributed quite a lot to the policies and regulations that have continued this work in improving water quality. But back then, it was a group of concerned citizens. The Connecticut River was incredibly polluted at that time due to our heritage of industry in this region. And there was just, the water quality was terrible. It was called the world's best landscaped cesspool, is what it was called. And so some concerned citizens came together, started the organization. And, it's just kind of grown and evolved from there. And it actually gives me a great sense of pride to know that I'm kind of contributing to something that has now been multi-generational. The work that I'm able to contribute is thanks to generations of professionals and volunteers and all these partnerships that came together before my time. So, we've evolved since then. And the way that we get funded comes in many forms. We do get state and federal grants. Things like U.S. Fish and Wildlife, for example, they're getting funds from the Federal Inflation Reduction Act, named so strangely, but there's a lot of climate and environment funding through that, as well as other more local foundations, charitable trusts, and things like that. And then, of course, we're a 501c3 nonprofit. So donations from ordinary citizens, ordinary people, whether it's a $5 donation because you just care about the river and that's all you can give, to more generous donations. People, we love hearing stories. I'm giving you $20, $100, whatever it might be, because I grew up by the river. I've been here for many generations. My grandfather lived here. It's incredible, just the stories that can emerge from people who are able to give. So grants combining regular donations, and then we consider things like volunteer engagement as a gift of generosity too. As an organization, we try to be really present and find connection points for people however they can engage. So if you're able to give your time by volunteering, that's fantastic. You'll have a wonderful time. You learn something about the river, or you can support financially because there really are a lot of costs to be able to do this. And that's really helpful too. So we kind of piece all of that together, and every year is a little bit different too, depending on what funding is available, what our goals might be. But it's all interconnected that way.
Yeah, that's a lot of administrative work for sure. But
yes, definitely. Yeah.
But I don't know. I totally get it though. Like I've only been living in the Connecticut River Valley for a couple of years now, and I just love going to it, just looking at it. Like there's just something like it draws you in. It's so alluring.
Definitely.
So that's just great that you can have so much community buy-in just from there being a natural resource.
Yeah.
And then you are, the stewards to help maintain
and
that.
I think it's because we have a shared goal. We love this beautiful place that we get to live in. So I think most people understand inherently that you need to do something to conserve it, to keep it beautiful, to keep it natural, to protect these wonderful places while still creating a way to build community and provide housing. That balance can definitely exist. So we're very fortunate to live in this beautiful New England place.
Yeah, I couldn't said it better myself. So all the river's tributaries are in your service area as well. Technically, you oversee everything connected to the Connecticut River Valley,
That's right.
Barring the ocean, I suppose. So are these tributaries also involved in the source to sea cleanup? I suspect they are. You mentioned the Black River Action Team earlier. I know that's a tributary of the river. So do you see a lot of involvement with source to sea specifically with a lot of the tributaries?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, people live everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think people feel most connected to the water body that they live by. So that brings people coming from all the nooks and crannies of the watershed. And not only the watershed organizations, but just the everyday people who want to clean up in their neighborhood, and maybe it's next to a stream or not. I do want to also emphasize that people don't have to only go by water bodies, because that piece of trash you pick up from your city street is being diverted from going down the storm drain and into the water that will eventually go into the river. So we like to pick up trash everywhere and know that it is also being diverted from the waterways. So that's an important feature. And also just thinking about the tributaries, we were double checking our numbers, and there's 148 tributaries in the Connecticut River watershed. And the tributaries are the feeders of the main, what we call the main stem, the Connecticut River. So all of that water, every time it rains and new water is coming in, are all eventually feeding the Connecticut River. So every river is another vein and another source of life for the whole system. So.
Yeah, it's a very simple concept, but it's also just incredible to think about the journey that
exactly
these things are,
that your
water, trash, whatever is going through.
Yeah.
And
not everyone knows what a watershed is, you know, and I think just think of it like a bowl, like a basin, you know, everything kind of drains and the main stem is the Connecticut River. But yeah, as the snow is melting from the top of the source of the river to all the rain that comes down, it all ends up in one place. And in our watershed, that ends up in the Long Island Sound.
Yeah. So one resource that I know you guys offer is the Is It Clean map. I love that. I use it often to know whether or not I should go swimming in the West River after work. So that's one example of like a map that you keep updated with data and that lets people know, the river or the tributary is clean. What are some other like kind of unique services sort of like that you folks offer?
Oh, how much time do you have? It really is quite a lot. So you're referring to Is It Clean, which is available at connecticutriver.us. And that is basically our water quality data resource. So we provide E. coli data. So every year from spring to about early fall, we have a lot of volunteers collecting water samples throughout the watershed. And then we publish the results of that water quality specific to E. coli on that map. In addition to that, we have a separate website too that is part of a collaborative for migratory fish research. So migratoryfish.org is another resource where if you're curious about what are the migratory fish specific to the Connecticut River watershed, that website is all about that. And then other programs that we have are aquatic invasive species. So specifically the two that we focus on are water chestnut and hydrilla. Earlier we mentioned advocacy. So the river stewards that we talked about, that's our advocacy program. In addition to all of this engagement with the community, they do commenting on bills, legislation. They've done a lot over the past 12 years on the hydropower relicensing process that's happening at 5 facilities on the Connecticut River. They're really the ones that are helping to reduce pollution before it starts, right? So they're in the courthouses, they're giving testimony on these things. We remove dams and we upgrade culverts to create flood resilience, improve water quality, create fish passage. There's a lot of obstructions to fish passage in our watershed. So by removing dams, restoring the natural free-flowing rivers, now the fish can access their streams to spawn, and that also improves sediment transport, water quality, things like that. We plant trees, we restore floodplain forests. I feel like I'm probably forgetting something, but yeah, there's a lot. I don't want to go on too long. But I think, what it comes down to is, we do a lot. We're not doing everything all at once all the time, but we're really seeing it as part of an interconnected cycle and an interconnected impact, right? So we were saying the data that we get from source to sea helps inform our advocacy work, right? Similar to the dam removals and planting trees helps improve water quality. And then we're also measuring water quality and looking at the data and the science of how these things are improved over time. So we're really looking holistically at the river, at the tributaries. And that's why we talk a lot about the watershed. That's what we want folks to understand, is that it's not just about the Connecticut River. It's not just about the rivers and the tributaries, because when you're part of a watershed, the land parts, the riverbanks, the communities, all of that is really interconnected. So we try to approach our programmatic work in a way that will improve our habitats. Our tagline is clean water, healthy habitats, resilient communities. Believe it or not, it takes a lot of effort to arrive at a tagline that's going to succinctly summarize so many things we do. It's such a challenge, but that's really what it comes down to is those three things, because we want to have, wonderful, healthy habitats and clean water for all the creatures and the people that live here.
Yeah, and it really is interconnected, every single part of it. Really, I like the term watershed as an umbrella because it really does sum up everything that's going to be affected by any decision that is made or any, act of nature that happens. It affects the entire watershed, for sure. I want to know sort of personally, on the more fun side of things, like what are your favorite parts about being involved with the Connecticut River Conservancy?
Should I start?
Yeah.
Well, I love paddling. And when I first moved, I moved to Western Mass in '95 from New York City. So I hadn't been doing a ton of water-related stuff living in the city. And coming here, I used to commute I lived in Amherst, Mass, and commuted to Northampton for work. And I would go over the bridge, and I'd see this river, and there'd always be traffic on the bridge, and everybody always complained about the bridge and the traffic. And one day I was like, wait, there's a river down there. Just trying to connect to what the vitality of what's all around me. So my family and I started an annual paddle on the river. So every year for the last 25, 30 years, we've been going out on the same little stretch. We put in on the Deerfield River, and we come out on the Connecticut down to the Sunderland Bridge. And we do it in the evening under the stars. And we bring food and lots of friends, and we tie up our paddles, our boats, and just spend a lot of the evening drifting down and just savoring the flow of the water under the stars. And
that sounds idyllic.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah.
Now, that's not part of my work that I love,
Right.
but that is
it's still
a side thing.
Professionally and personally, you engage with the river because it's all intrinsically connected.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's what kind of drew me to wanting to work here. And initially I did volunteer when I left another career. And I really love just bringing people together in support of this really important mission to keep our rivers clean and safe and protected and restored. And I often feel like a lot of people, I think, feel very alone. You see trash, you might go pick it up, but you don't even realize that there's all these other people who share that desire too. So the beauty of being able to organize an event like the cleanup allows me to kind of help people understand that they're not alone out there. We're all doing this together. We've had over 40,000 volunteers in the course of our history of running the cleanup. And a lot of them are repeaters, so it's not 40,000 individuals, but that is also the beauty, that people come back year after year with their families, with their friends, colleagues, and all join hands together to do something positive.
Yeah, it keeps your own personal buy-in pretty high, I feel like, and just I guess morale is more what
it's
I'm going
very
after
gratifying.
Here. Yeah. What about you, Diana?
I just feel such immense gratitude for living in this watershed, living in this beautiful place, surrounded by trees and rivers and wildlife. And I am just so grateful to be able to do work that contributes to sustaining and restoring nature. I mean, I just was always that kid. My grandparents had a garden. I loved being outside. I loved being in the dirt. My grandfather took me fishing. He was really influential in my young life. He took me mushroom foraging and all of these wonderful things. So I love being able to contribute professionally to sustaining this beautiful place for future generations. And also, I have kids. I love that I can foster that in them as well. They come to our volunteer events as well. My son loves the outdoors. He's helped us rescue sea lamprey and do all of these things. So it really feels for me like being professionally and personally connected to giving back to this wonderful place that sustains me. And that is just incredibly rewarding. And a cherry on top is that I get to work with incredible people like Stacy and meet with you and just other community members, other staff, the boards, all of our partners, just connecting with a lot of other people that feel that passion too. It's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, that rocks.
Yeah.
I can't really put it in any other words. That's like truly the human experience right there. And, you get to really live that out professionally, which I think is great.
Yep.
So we've diverged, a bit, which I think is all well and good. But could we maybe reiterate the details for Source to See if folks are just tuning in, or maybe we've forgotten because we're so enraptured by the river and life and all that jazz?
Well, I should share the URL again. It's sourcetoseecleanup.org. And there's 2 paths to join. One is if you want to start a group and pick a place that you know and love and want to clean up, or you can even find a place. We have a list of sites that you can adopt on our map. So you have a path to be a leader and form a group, or you have the path to look at our list of existing groups and pick one that you want to join near you. So sourcetoseecleanup.org for all of that and all the resources.
Great, and it's taking place majorly in the fourth weekend of September, right?
Yes, or choose a date that works for you.
Or choose a date, yeah. Great. Is there anything else either of you would like to add just about the work you do, or anything else?
I'm going to give a little bit of a plug to our newsletter list, because we hope you can join the cleanup, but even if you cannot, if you go to ctriver.org/email and sign up, you can sign up for a specific state e-blast. So if you're really interested in Vermont, you can sign up for Kathy's Vermont e-blast. And then we also have a watershed-wide newsletter. So that's just a really good way of having all of the different things that we do come to your inbox. We do other types of events. We do virtual live streams. We have reporting and stories about the dams that we're removing. So ctriver.org/email.
I just signed up actually last week, and it was like, do you want this kind of email, this kind of email? And I was like, ooh, I have options.
You have options. And do the watershed wide. I write those, and those are the most universal as well. So I would recommend watershed wide plus the state that you live in to be fully informed.
For sure.
Yeah.
What about you, Stacey?
I would just add also that we have a lot of other volunteer events, community science events, usually spring, summer, and a little bit into fall. Diana mentioned our fish migration program, our aquatic species removal programs. And so there's a lot of ways to get involved, not just picking up trash, but doing active things that contribute to our science and understanding of the rivers. So
great.
There too.
Well, thank you both for joining me on this episode of BCTV's Open Studio today. I appreciate it.
Thanks, you. Johnny. Great talking with you.
It's a lot of fun.
Likewise. And thank you for tuning into BCTV's Open Studio. Remember that you can always check out more about the Connecticut River Conservancy if you so desire by visiting ctriver.org. That's the website, right? ctriver.org. There's Source to See cleanups happening throughout September. So just contribute to your rivers however you see fit. They're intrinsic part of our lives. Thanks for sticking with us.